Okay, welcome everybody. We'll get the third of our 4 series of webinars underway. The next one will be in September, after we have the, or before we have the opening. I have to check the date. But welcome to this shareholder seminar, or stakeholder seminar number 3. What we'll do is, first of all, I just want to acknowledge where I'm at home, which is next to Lamington National Park in Bitterborough. And even though we're not on the Bitterborough site, I'm broadcasting to you from the land of the Yugambeh language people. And we like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and recognise their continuing connection to land and the water and the culture of this area. And we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Our agenda today is I'll just do a couple of things about the Zoom protocols and then some introductory comments, and then I'll get Jonathan to walk through various activities occurring on the site, and Tim will also support that, and then we'll have a question and answer session. In relation to the Zoom protocols, if you know how to turn on and off your audio, if there's particularly there's background noise like dogs barking, birds are good if they're not too loud. And if you're having a chat with some other people in the house, just remember to mute your audio. And if you wish to speak in the Q&A, remember to unmute the audio also. Now we're recording this, so if anybody doesn't wish to be recorded, you can mute and block out your face. But we do record these and we share them with all other shareholders and stakeholders of Binna Burra also. It becomes a public document. And it's also part of the record of the post-bushfire recovery process that people will be looking at in years to come in terms of the way that we communicated 2 ways from a Binna Burra point of view and with our internal and our external stakeholders. We're about a year now since the bushfires hit us, and on the 8th of September last year, it was a Sunday when the fires came through Bitterborough. The day before they came through our Beachmont community. And as you all know, we lost 11 houses plus the lodge, and there was damage to other buildings and property and so forth. The good news is that many hundreds of houses were saved. This year, our conditions are very, very different. We've still got wind. Today's a windy day as an example, but the conditions, we've had moisture, we've had winter rain, and we have a very different environment that we're managing this year. However, today and tomorrow are high fire danger days because the temperature's going up, the wind's strong, and there's still grass, a lot of grass fire potential around. So our rural fire brigade are on high alert for the next few days. And so we have to take extra care again. So we've been going through this recovery, the immediate response and recovery process now for almost a year, and we're almost at the finish line of getting across the line to get access back into the lodge. And we'll talk about that today a lot as we go through our discussion. And also, of course, all of us in the last number of months have had to deal with the COVID pandemic. And that adds another layer of complexity to various things. From Binna Burra's point of view, in terms of when we get reopened with our business opportunities, Binna Burra has always been a predominantly domestic Southeast Queensland corner marketplace. And so having the borders closed is not good, but from a business point of view, but because our market is very much within a 2 or 3 hour drive of the location, we think we'll be able to absorb as long as we keep Queenslanders travelling within Queensland, that should be okay for us. We know O'Reilly's are running well over 90% occupancy. Last night I was talking to somebody associated with the Spices properties here in Queensland and on the other side, the Lamington National Park are running well in the 90% occupancy level. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to maintain those sort of levels, especially with the sky lodges. And then after that, our tents when we're able to reopen. So hopefully September, October, November can get us going back into the trading situation. It's been very challenging not having any substantial trading activities for 12 months. It has put a lot of pressure on the company to stay solvent, but we've managed, looks like, to get across the line for many, many reasons. But we would have done it without enormous help and cooperation by so many people directly involved in Bitterborough or supporting Bitterborough. Last week, in the floor of the Queensland Parliament, the Premier of the state announced the reopening of visitors to Bitterborough next month. And that's significant. You know, we're just a little tiny place at the end of a road at Lamington National Park, and probably the only tourism facility in Queensland that gets on the floor of Parliament, gets the Premier to make reference to us about our reopening. So why would they do that? Well, there's a lot of support that, and we've worked very closely with all government, local, state and federal, especially the Queensland government, and especially because that's where the money's come from for the road repair. And that tricky road into Bitterborough, which has got an enormous history associated with it, by the way, going back to the 1920s and the 30s and ongoing up until the early 1950s, when the company basically gave the road to the state government, thankfully. There's another new story about the road and the infrastructure. And for those of you who have not had an opportunity to see it firsthand, when you do come back to Bitterborough, you'll see that that it's almost an attraction in its own right, what the engineers have done to repair the access road into Bitterborough. That announcement of Parliament generated media coverage, and there's a couple of examples there. It's nice to get a great story in The Age in Melbourne, but nobody in Victoria can come and visit us now. But nevertheless, when they can, they'll know that we're back on the radar. But we've also been able to get very good radio and television coverage. And when we reopen, on the anniversary of the bushfire, which is Tuesday, the 8th of September, in the morning, the 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. slot, ABC Radio Brisbane, ABC Radio Gold Coast will be broadcasting from Bitterborough. And that's great, because that's really our target market. One of our key target markets is the ABC listening audience in Southeast Queensland. So that's the sort of support we're getting from our relationships with any others. When we get access back into Bitterborough, which is the first week of September, at the same time, we've coordinated that with Queensland National Parks, that the trails will reopen on the Bitterborough side of Lamington National Park. We have 14 trailheads for the national parks from around Bitterborough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those will remain closed in total. 3 of them are listed there. Who are the other 2? But Ilambah Circuit will be closed. Lower Bellbird Circuit will be closed, apart from a little bit off the road, which is part of the connection for the Gold Coast Hinterland Great Walk program. And the Gorongal Pool track needs a lot of work still, and it will remain closed. On our land and Bitterborough land, the Bellbird Lookout track is mainly on Bitterborough land, crosses over a bit of National Parks land on a little bit, but that will remain closed also. But there'll still be plenty of trails for people to come to the Lamington National Park on our side and enjoy the park. They won't be able to see Bigfoot though. That photograph of me there somebody took last week. And those of you who know that beautiful old tree, 500 plus years old, the fire went right around the back of the tree. She got singed at the back, and the forest is burnt around the back of it, but she got through, and she'll be around for many more hundreds of years, I'm sure, and people will be able to enjoy it when that track reopens, which is probably not going to be until well into next year. We can talk more about that when Tim talks about the Via Ferrata development. So our biggest single challenge since the fire, we've had a lot of challenges, but from an access point of view, it's been the road and that cliff above and below the access road. And Main Roads and the contractors have done just an incredible amount of work to stabilise that cliff and do the work that they needed to be done. But it's interesting when you go back and look at the history. This is on the anniversary date of the bushfire, 8th of September, way back in 1938. And you can see that the story of the road goes back a long way. And when Ramea Leahy, and using his engineering knowledge, started to carve out a track, and the forestry department was involved, and the predecessors of Main Roads got involved. And there's been lots of discussion and activities and investment, both by Binna Burra in the early days and by the government and public sector after that to keep an access to the Bitterborough side of the Lamington National Park. The road's not just for us, it's not just for Bitterborough. Most of the people who use the road are people who are using Lamington National Park. We're the beneficiary of that road that comes through. So that's what the old road, some of you who have been around a long, long time may even remember the bus even in the old road up to Bitterborough. And that's what it looked like after the fire, the day of the fire on the Sunday afternoon. Well, actually, even with all the roadworks that's going on now, we're still getting slight rockfalls come down when the winds or the rains come. So there's still work that Transport Main Roads are doing there. This is what it looked like those few days after the fire last year. That's a group of Main Roads people assessing the damage at the time, looking at a strategy to repair above and below the road. When the trees burn and get loose, they fall, they loosen the rock systems underneath, and you've got a lot of instability on the cliff face. But this is what it's starting to look like now. We've got rails all the way through. It's a pretty flash road for Bitterborough standards. And you'll see up on the right-hand side the sorts of retaining infrastructure that's being put on the wall of the cliff. Now that cliffside land is actually Bitterborough land. And so issues arise when public money, like Main Roads, is putting millions of dollars into infrastructure onto private land in terms of who looks after that in the future and what liabilities are associated with it. So we're in advanced discussions with Main Roads and the state government to broaden the boundary, so that where the infrastructure is to retain and make that cliff safe, we bequeath that land to the state, and it becomes a state responsibility to look after the ongoing maintenance needs of the cliff and the road also. And that's another shot coming from the lodge down. I took just last week, I think I took that shot. And you'll see the enormous amount of work below the road to widen it and strengthen the cliff, as well as the work that's going on above the cliff also. As you go down that road and around to the left, there's still a lot of cliff work going on down towards the ranger's hut, and that's yet to be finished. When the road is open to public access, there'll be a ceremony on the Saturday, August 29, by the state government to sort of officially open the road. That's more of a media event. But when the public comes through, and we have people booked into the lodge from the 1st of September, there'll still be controlled access. Won't be free for all in and out, because there's still roadworks going on. And controlled access means it might be traffic lights, it might be a traffic control person with a stick, but there'll still be for a couple of months work going on, but at least we can get back on site and get customers in and get the cash flow going again for the business. You would have received notes about this wonderful book that Don Marshall's produced, one of our long-term shareholders, and Don has researched lots of history about the formation of Lamington National Park and Bitterborough Lodge right up to the Second World War. It's a 200-page book, excuse me, he printed on both sides, so there's 400 pages of great information, and lots of things we learn, new things about Bitterborough. So one of the things I've learned recently is that Arthur Groom, while he was secretary of the newly formed Queensland National Park Association, which happened 3 years before Bitterborough was formed, he was also company secretary of O'Reilly's, a family company, which is a bit of new information for me. And then he, of course, with Romeo Leahy and others, many others, formed the company Queensland Holiday Resorts, which of course Bitterborough grew out of. But if you haven't got one of the books, it's $99. Don's actually produced and donated the production of all this to us, and we're using the funds raised. We've sold about 30 books, I think, so far, using the funds to help with what I'll tell you more about later, the Bushfire Gallery at Bitterborough, and also recreating our library, which Jonathan will speak more about in relation to Groom's Cottage later on. And you can book those on our website, but if that's not easy for you, when we've finished today in the question and answer session, just give us the details and we'll get somebody to follow up with you if you want to get one, purchase one. So it's $99 plus postage. Or when you come up and visit after September, you can buy one up at the lodge. Now I'm going to hand over to Jonathan just to give us an update on our plan, our reopening plan, and an update on where we're going now over the next couple of months in the immediate opening of the lodge. Thanks, Jonathan.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And Steve, if you're still driving the slides, that's fine. I'll just give you the nod.
Yep, just tell me if I'm
well. Here is the righty-ho. So here's the roadmap we've been working to for the last 3 months or so now, and we're on track for want of a better pun, I suppose. We're just over a week and a half away from the opening of the road. The date for the Treasurer to come up has yet to be formally announced, but it's coming very, very, very soon. And that will enable us to open as planned up the top there of that roadmap for the National Parks opening and also the Sky Lodges opening. At the same time as the Sky Lodges opening, Groom's Cottage, certainly the ground floor of Groom's Cottage will be open as a place where Sky Lodge people can get information, a cup of coffee, glass of wine, something like that. Also, day visitors walking through will use that as a place where they can get more information and so on and so forth. Then we'll be working around visitors going through our site up into the national park itself. They'll be benefiting from new infrastructure that we're going to see in a minute. But we will be working towards an event on the 8th of September, which I don't think is shown on here, which will be an event which will be concentrating on commemorating the fire itself. So very much an event which is probably going to be fairly emotional for a lot of people, but will be led by the Mayor of Scenic Room Council. It'll be an opportunity for Steve to introduce the new Bushfire Gallery, which again will show some pictures of the concept of that coming up later in this presentation. Before we look to the next part on this roadmap, which is the opening, full opening of the campsites, the safari tents, and the Limited Tea House. So we're on track. There's an awful lot of work to do. There are a number of volunteers that are coming up tomorrow, more people putting their hand up to help with all sorts of tasks, from gardening to putting together beds to cleaning to just basically giving some support as we get ready for visitors to come back onto site. And there's a little koala that's been watching us in a tree recently. It's been in various positions. I saw it from the Sky Lodges a couple of weeks ago, and just over the weekend it was looking down on us over where the tree work's been going on. So I've been giving the animals a little bit of a heads up as well about what's happening with visitors coming back. So we move on to the next screen. There we go. So this is an example of some of the marketing that's going on. Some of you in Brisbane, I hope, will see this image flashing up on those fancy digital billboards that you see around various places. Thanks to the insurance company for the body corporate for Sky Lodges, we were able to help invest in giving the Sky Lodges, but obviously Bitterborough in general, a little bit of help over the next month. And this is an example of a very simple image that is already proving to be very effective, getting people's attention. This went up on billboards on Monday night, and we saw a spike in inquiries that same night, thanks to Bradley and his team. Brad's sitting here, I can see him in my lounge room around the corner, the unofficial beach office of Binna Burra. So you'll see some of this going on. We're still on top of the world. I think it's very evocative and seems to be working well for us. So let's go on to the next screen.
This is just some shots to show the infrastructure improvements, Jonathan.
Yeah, so I might just pass to Tim just to talk us through where we're at with this one, Tim, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I think as most people are aware, it was only the top level of the Lodge 4, the one lowest down the hill, that was initially damaged by the fire. Before the work started on it, the rain in January leaked down into the 2 units below, which effectively has meant the whole of Lodge 4 is being replaced internally. Most of the furniture in Lodges 1, 2 and 3 is being replaced. And we're targeting to have Lodges 1, 2 and 3 open and ready to go by the 1st of September, as mentioned before. Lodge 4 was about a week or two behind that, so bookings from the 14th of September. But come that date, everything will be finished. I was just around there this morning, and there's landscapers on site, and 6 electricians, there's people putting in floors, there's people putting in carpets, there's next week all the furniture arrives, so it's a lot happening right at the end. And there'll still be a bit of outside works going on next week or two, but basically by the 14th of September, Sky Lodges are fully up and running, and hopefully just about fully booked, if not fully booked already.
Yeah, just adding to that, we are almost constantly recruiting at the moment. So we just welcomed our executive housekeeper on board just on Monday, and she was on site organising linen contracts and all those other bits and pieces that are required to get placed on welcoming guests from the 1st of September. So there's a lot of work to be done, and everybody's pulling their weight. It's fantastic. Here we are on the site of the former lodge. It has been not only cleared but levelled since, thanks to the work of TMR. They have been so generous in helping us in so many different ways. This was the very evocative site of the second camp out with Groom Brothers, with Richard and Tony, with our chairman and myself just on Sunday, which was, I think, a very important time to reinstill in me, at least, that let's let the national park do the talking and the walking, that we are very much a meeting place where people might come as strangers but leave as friends, and our activities are very much geared towards the opportunities within the park and conversations that go from doing things together around and working on the park. So it was a real opportunity to sleep up here. There's a very famous book in Richmond history called Where the Beech Trees Grow, and I think we're going to try and encourage Richard to do the same book and use the working title Where the Wind Blows, and I was going to do ... a lot. We had a very windy night up there, and a lot of atmosphere, but it also reminded us of probably why Arthur Groom sited Groom's Cottage where he did, in the lee of the trees with a little bit more protection. But what we have now here is an exciting location with wonderful 360-degree views, where the management team and our Metest architects are working hard now on a concept plan to suggest why the National Bushfire Recovery funding might help us fund the dream of rebuilding a lodge on top of that site. So having it now cleared like this gives us an opportunity to redo the survey plan and put in some concepts to the government for them to consider us worthy of further funding. So that's where we're at with Robert. Moving on. Okay. So this gives you a bit of an example of the befores and after, the row of fire damaged trees between the upper and lower levels of the lodge, and now from a different direction showing those trees on the left of that shot that have been removed, with a very practical, cleared level there, where we are just exploring at the moment some interim uses of those two levels that might be possible during our planning phases for the ultimate rebuild of the lodge above. We've left with a very tidy site, if you like. There are still some risks there in terms of where people should or should not be walking. So you'll find when you next come up here that there will be gated access up to the area. We will encourage guided walks up there. But it is an area where we're going to have to be a little bit careful. Here we are showing the lovely old sign up to the lodge, and which is now being revealed again thanks to some guarding by our chairman. But to the right of that, this amazing, smooth, beautiful asphalt road that, thanks to TMR doing some further improvement works, thanks to Tim's work negotiating with TMR, and to the right, the saddle with the extra car parking spaces that have been built to the left of that photograph. It looks lovely and very practical as well. So it's, since this photograph's been taken, it's all been lined out, and will, I think, show to people some of the investment that's gone into this site before the reopening. So congratulations to Tim and his negotiation, but also our thanks to state government for their remarkable support. This is public land. They are investing in their own land on this particular part. Our BBL land is either side of that road that goes to the middle of our site. So moving on.
Just checking, Jonathan.
Yep. That's it. Waiting for the technology. So the beloved Groom's Cottage, you've heard it before, how we're sort of talking about it as the Heritage Heart. It has been cleared of furniture at the moment, and we're just sorting out the layout of the servery in front of the kitchen that was invested in some years ago, which we will retain and reuse. And as I said earlier in the piece, we will be hosting, we hope, a ministerial function there to celebrate the opening of the road towards the end of August, dates to be confirmed. But thereon, it will be, for the next 2 weeks, will be where people can gather, get information, buy a cup of coffee before the tea house opens properly itself on the 14th. Progress on the library above, it's been cleared out. We're waiting for our contractors, Oak and Iron, to finish the tea house job before we can make much progress on improving the stair access and the shelving, etc., upstairs. But it's still in the planning to open that up as soon as we can. Library reading room to recreate kind of spirit of Bitterborough again. But it's sitting up there in the afternoon with a bit of sun on. It's going to be a very popular spot. Here we are, the safari tents, all but finished now. They have all been rebuilt by our own internal maintenance team. There's retaining walls going in as I speak at the moment. Furniture has arrived. That's all being put together with people from all sorts of parts of the company, and we're excited about that being reopened. The bookings are strong for the safari tents, the campgrounds, the sky lodges, particularly as you'd expect at weekends and into the school holidays. If you're looking to come up and spend a few days, if I could encourage you to spread the word that there's space during the week, that would be very helpful. That's when we have a bit of capacity. But at weekends, you would probably already late for September. It's looking pretty strong for October. It's a nice problem to have. But they really are looking lovely. There's a lot of care gone into those safari tents, so people will enjoy them. Moving on. We're up with the times. So we've got a Tesla recharging center there, and some improved power points for the powered sites up on the campgrounds. I'm not sure whether that means whether the company's going to give me a Tesla car. I don't think that's part of my package, but I'm living in hope. But certainly it shows where the direction that we are moving towards in continuing our focus on being a ecotourism, a sustainable attraction which supports innovation and less pollution in the planet. So that's a nice touch. Tesla have actually done that to us, and we found a spot for that to go in. So moving on. The tea house. To the left is images of the work that was done to repaint the exterior of the existing tea house, thanks to support from Dulux. Amazing donation of their paint and services to do the painting. And to the right is the entrance to the tea house as it's been built. You'll see the framing of a new storeroom and staff toilet just to the left. There's some boards leading against the windows there. That is the windows of the food and beverage and reception staff office. And straight on is where there is a booking window being built at the moment, so people can stand there and book into their campsites to get information without necessarily coming into the tea house itself. You will be turning right just past that right-hand blue pillar into a retail reception area. So we have taken the opportunity to move the retail, that area that was within the lodge, into the front of the tea house proper. And in the best practices of tourism, you will be going in and out of the tea room via the retail. So we know from experience that has a positive impact on sales, and we hope that the experience won't be too brash, that we will carefully select what we're selling there to promote the scenic room, to promote practical things that people can use on the campsite, and the sky lodges, clothing, food, and support local artists. So I think it will be a pleasant experience, not a forced experience. And a remarkable job has been done there, given that the contract was only let at the beginning of August and beginning of July, and it is now on track to be finished about 31st of August. And then the next 2 weeks we'll be spending the time putting in the equipment, the computers, the servers, the kitchen equipment will be put back in, so that becomes really the real heart of where people book in and get more information. It's also the place where we'll be promoting the Via Ferrata from, so there'll be a lot of information about activities and what's coming to the Via Ferrata, and we've used some of the funding from Via Ferrata to do some of the improvements there that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to fund. So I think you'll enjoy some changes. We hope in due course that we get some further funding to add a what I call a sky deck on the back of it. And now we've jumped to the Binna Burra barn, and the Bushfire gallery proposed will be opened officially on the 8th of September. So this lovely old building is going to be put to a very appropriate use. And there are plans with the government at the moment to consider for a new amenities block just to the right of the barn, and new meeting room stroke group accommodation, given the demand that we have, and also the fact that we want to very much promote the fact that Bitterborough is a place for people of all age groups as they journey through life, from camping with mum and dad through when they come with a university group to stay in a group, through to where they might be staying in more comfort and more romantic circumstances up at the Sky Lodges. So it is important that we invest in our group facilities and our camping facilities, and the barn precinct was always, I suppose, planned to have some expansion in the 2008 Marston Plan, and we'll wait and see whether or not the funding comes through to enable to do those immediate improvements over the next 12 months or so. But it will be lovely to see the memories of the bushfire respected. When I say lovely, obviously it's an emotional thing, but it's very appropriate, probably the better term, that we are telling the story of what happened, but at the same time reminding people that they should stay ever vigilant in this current bushfire season and be prepared for what may come again. But hopefully we can show that Binna Burra has the plans, the management, the ability to do the right thing. It's a safe place to come and stay, and we look forward to the next few years, next 80 years of Binna Burra and more. So moving on. Steve, do you want to just talk to this one?
This is just an example of our, we have a lead university partnership with Griffith University, and the broader umbrella is the Science Matters initiative at Binna Burra. Going back to the early 1930s, there was a very strong association between Binna Burra and the only university in Queensland at the time, which was University of Queensland. And like Richards, who's the first professor of geology at UQ, he was an initial board member of Binna Burra, and many others also. So that relationship over decades with universities, research, education, training has always been quite substantial for Binna Burra. And we still engage with many universities, but because Griffith is the biggest and largest player in our patch, in our neighbourhood, the relationship with them has strengthened. So one example is we cooperated with Griffith and Mount Barney Lodge and Scenic Rim Regional Council, and we've been successful through Griffith of securing $45,000 over the next 12 months. And that's going to collect a lot of local community, including the Binna Burra community, reactions to the bushfire, so it's documented. And what that means is that at Binna Burra, we'll have a mobile facility. It'll be touch the screen, where people will put their comments about and reactions and emotional sense about the bushfire. And that will move around the Scenic Rim Regional Council area, but it will start at Binna Burra. And so that gives people a chance to download their feelings, and that can be, the researchers will then go through that and document it and gather these stories and tell the story about the bushfire experience. You know, back in the 1930s, O'Reilly's had the unfortunate Stinson crash, but ever since they've leveraged that in their marketing and in tours and in storytelling. Well, to some extent, the bushfire last year has become the Stinson of Bitterborough, as in terms of a significant event over time. And so we tell that story in 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years' time. Hopefully there's no more bushfires. But we can tell that story better, or future generations can learn about it by having good science to document the impacts and the reactions of people. So that's what that particular program is about. I'll hand back to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, just notice our very adaptable King Parrot. In the Bushfire Gallery, he's got his firefighter's hat on, and in the Science Matters, he's got his professor's tableau on. So we like to have a nice bit of consistency in branding, but we also have a little bit of fun in it as well. So I think that it makes me smile anyway. So let's move on. The Pottery Shed, one of the few buildings that we've got left. We are initially working out of the Pottery Shed at the moment. The housekeeping team are working out of the Pottery Shed whilst we wait for some storage to be rebuilt down next to the Sky Lodges. But in due course, it will become where the activities team will be working out of, which we're very pleased will be through a partnership with Lisa Groom's International Park Tours. Granddaughter of Arthur is, it's very important that we have that involvement. There are a lot of people working on the mountain for Lisa already. Her business has been, like any holiday business, that tourism business that's worked internationally, has been decimated. So it's the ideal opportunity to bring Lisa and her team back to work on what I call walking and wellness activities for the next year or so, guided walks and other activities on the mountain. I haven't seen her full program yet. I understand that's on the way, but there will be activities around walking and wellness starting from, I think, the 18th of September. And then in due course, that will then integrate with Tim's plans to introduce the Via Ferrata and reintroduce around about that same time more of the adventure tourism side that Binna has been associated with, the abseiling and the like. There won't be that adventure tourism activities happening on Binna in the next sort of 9 months or so. That'll be reintroduced when the Bellbird clearing comes back into public area use in July next year. But the Pottery Shed will be where IPT and the activities will be based from in the next 6 months or so, which means that we're going to have to be adaptable, Yankees and others, about where we host our friends of Binna and our LNHA. But as I said before, the Groom's Cottage during the day is still going to be available. And I'm sure we'll work around how we can make sure that we can welcome and give our FOBS people and NHA people adequate places to work. We are down at BBK at the old school site, magnificent vista. I don't know what that isn't the hero shot of tourism around here, but we're certainly using it. And to the left, celebrating our partnership with the Cynic Rim Farm Box, so we're supplying the food up there for people to enjoy for the Providore shop. But also that will probably feature in what people can buy as they book into the Sky Lodges and even the camping grounds. So there's an opportunity for us to supply everything you need for your breakfast. That's all come from the local Scenic Rim area. So I think that will be both a practical but also a nice investment in the Scenic Rim that visitors will enjoy. The BBK is now open as of this week, Friday through to Sunday. We have temporarily at this stage suspended it between Monday and Tuesday, as the staff from there are all helping us up at the mountain to get ready this last push for these openings over the first 2 weeks of September. But it was busy at the weekend. Just to the right of the building down there where you see the cars are parked, and to the right and below, that area is going to be improved by the state government as part of the Bitterborough investment in the Bitterborough roads and as a recognition of the impact of the fires in the Beachmont community. So we've had the benefit of being invited there, but we've also been able to bring a little bit of investment to the Beachmont village that otherwise I suspect wouldn't have happened without that connection. So if you haven't been up there, please make sure that you pop in on BBK, Bitterborough Kitchen, on your way up or back from Bitterborough on your next visit. Okay.
Jonathan, just want to make some comments, perhaps with Tim's support, on the master planning process that we're going through.
Yep, we've engaged a gentleman called Tristan Schultz from Relative Creative. He's an Indigenous man with European heritage, his words. I have worked with him before through the National Trust. He has these amazing skills of being able to win the trust of First Nations people. And so he has picked up where we left off with Wairaka, the Yugenbear group, which is working out of the Cowan Development Corporation, who are based down at Burleigh. He is at this stage organising the various Welcome to Country and other First Nations contribution to the reopening of Binna Burra, and working to a timetable that then integrates their voice into our master plan process. That master plan process will continue. It picks up on the shareholder meetings and stakeholder meetings that happened at the AGM last year and in March this year. Tristan is facilitating more up-to-date conversations about how we adapt to the 2008 master plan, and how we can reflect the comments from those early discussions in November and March last year to concentrate on what a lodge might look like up on this site that you're looking at here, and then to bring the plan up to date with the impact of what Via Ferrata is going to do to access to the Bellbird clearing, and then look again at the various other suggestions in the 2008 plan, which included a more accommodation down at Bellbird clearing, the Eco Science Centre that was suggested, and also the precinct around the barn, which at that stage was more of a wellness centre and group activity centre. That's exactly what we have designed and we're waiting for funding for. So the master plan process will continue over the next couple of months, and we expect to have a draft master plan updated to present to the shareholders at the November AGM. That's our target. If that all goes to plan, then Tristan, with his graphic skills, will produce a comprehensive report, and we'll start working then on the interpretation of the site, on signage and wayfinding and brand, a brand style guide, which is all consistent with the spirit of Bitterborough. Okay.
Tim, did you want to add anything on that section?
Probably not. Just I think it's an exciting time to be starting with a clean slate again. We've got a lot of good input and a lot of good ideas from the AGM last year and the shareholder day we had at the school earlier this year. And we're building on that to hopefully come up with something that's going to be pretty magic, pretty iconic and pretty special, something we can all be very proud of.
Thanks, Tim. Tim, I might lead in with you now just to briefly run around the work that's going on.
Okay. I think Jonathan's covered most of the tea house area, the plan for the barn area, the plans, well, master planning on the top. I mentioned the Sky Lodges, work's nearly finished there, be open in September. So for me then, my focus will move a bit down towards the Via Ferrata area, and the track we know goes down to the old maintenance shed and then down to Bellbird clearing. One of the part of the funding we got was to be able to pave the road from Old Windy Corner, Rubbish Bin Corner, down to the old maintenance shed. However, because with the support of our friends at TMR, with the extra car parks in the saddle, we've been able to free up a bit more money, which means we should be able to pave all the way down to Bellbird clearing, which makes it a much more usable adventure activities area. The first of which will be obviously the Flying Fox, but the next big activity will be the Via Ferrata. Things are progressing there in that since we last spoke, we've had the geotechs on site. They've produced a 3D model of the whole site. And last week we were abseiling down at various points, doing their rock tapping and working out which parts we could use and can't use. I'm expecting that report by the end of this week. And from that, we'll sort of start designing exactly where the route will be. Obviously, we've had concept plans, but they're always subject to what the geotechs came up with. Once we've got those general concepts, we'll then start the process of having to clear and scale the parts where we'll be. So there's a lot of dead trees on that cliff from the fire. It's also exposed a lot of sort of loose rock that we'll have to clean out. So a bit like they did below the sky lodges, there'll be a bit of clearing on that cliff. And then before the end of the year, we'll be building the Via Ferrata in stages, so that the target is sort of June next year. We have an activity, pretty exciting activity, the first in Australia, to be open to the public. But lots of work going on there. So there'll be a Via Ferrata building, a training centre. There'll be the roadworks down to there, extra car parks, as well as obviously the activity itself. And hopefully next time we talk, we'll have a whole lot more pictures to show you.
That's great. Thanks, Tim. That's great. So the Via Ferrata, you know, as Tim mentioned, and Jonathan, it's a signature adventure product. So under the Bitterborough Adventures brand, next year we'll be able to, you know, take element of the experience of Bitterborough into the marketplace. But you know, Bitterborough has always had an association with outdoor active adventure stuff, and that will continue in the future, and we'll build it around a Bitterborough Adventures brand, but with Via Ferrata certainly as a signature product. Okay, folks, we'll move now into any questions people have got. What I might do is stop. Maybe I can do it this way. Let's see how we go. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask us, myself, or the team? We've got team from our management team online also. If there's any questions, let me know and I'll see if I can run the technology. Remember, you have to unmute on your side.
Yeah, Ian Herbert here. Steve?
Yeah, Ian, got you.
Yep. I'm a little bit in the dark in terms of the master planning process. If we're working on the basis of the 2008 master plan, it was written when there was a lodge there. We now have a clean slate, and at the AGM last November, and the sessions following the AGM in November, there were suggestions there for a total rethink as to where buildings should be, and maybe up on the top of Mount Roberts, the summit isn't the right place. Maybe that should be open area, and the lodge should be in the saddle. Yeah, I thought there was a whole lot of other possibilities, but if we're working on a specific master plan, and we're going to be presented with something which is almost a fait accompli in terms of design, and all we're left to comment on as shareholders is, you know, the positioning of a few minor things, or, you know, is there possibility to present shareholders with a heap of kind of fairly widely different alternatives?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Ian. So there's been different views from shareholders. I mean, we have, as you know, we have about 800 shareholders, and of those, we've probably got about 100, 200 who are active. So we get lots of views, not only from shareholders, but from many other stakeholders also. And so we get views from saying, leave the whole place empty, build nothing there, and go somewhere else and build anything else, or try and recreate what was there before, or do something different in terms of a lodge and accommodation and so forth. And then there's also the reality of where the money comes from, who's going to pay for it. And so the process, we were very fortunately awarded in the bushfire recovery grants from the feds money for master planning processes. And that process is now underway, and it started after the AGM last year. There are some opportunities that have come about just last Friday with some funding application, competitive funding, which have to be submitted in a very short period of time, for example, before state government goes into caretaker mode for an election. And so there's some opportunities that we are factoring in, and to take advantage of those opportunities, some preliminary design work needs to be done and lodged if we're going to be competitive and successful in securing those monies. But we may not get those monies, and there may be other things to do. I'm going to, but we have we're fortunate enough with Bitterborough that we've got a lot of really experienced people whom I'm confident represent the general will and thrust of the shareholders. So as an example, one of the things that we've done since the bushfire, and they've been very kind, is over the chairman who preceded me, which was Rob McDowell and Hal Morris, we're going back 12, 15 years, have come back and have been very supportive and engaged and come back in the board or as company secretary. We've had a reconstruction council, which has been a representative group of a couple of dozen people who know and love and understand the culture of Binna Burra, because we can't go out and talk to 600, 800 people all the time. We've got to have a sense and have some leadership, get a sense of what the Binna Burra family and shareholders would want, and then also balance that up with where we can get resources to rebuild a vision. And they're the sorts of things that we're constantly working on. I'm going to just prepare Jonathan and Tim to make some comments in response to your question also, in terms of the process and what we present, because as in their respective roles, which are brilliant contributors to Binna Burra, and they're quite important in our technical approach and the way we structure these sorts of things. Jonathan, did you want to add something at this stage, and then I might ask Tim to comment on Ian's question?
Yes, if you don't mind. Ian, in direct responses, yes, we are considering what we can, and have considered what we can do on alternative locations, the saddle in particular, which is why a month or two ago, when the growing tourism infrastructure funding was offered, that we concentrated on looking at what we could do to expand our facilities beside the barn in a way that was consistent with the 2008 plan. So we are already looking at expanding our facilities in and around the saddle. I mean, I asked the same question you just asked about whether it was predetermined that we recreate the accommodation of the lodge up on Mount Robert. The answer to that was fairly simple, in that for the majority of people, the feedback that came back from the shareholders and the stakeholders over the last 6 months was, yes, there is an expectation there. But it doesn't mean to say that we're not considering other options very carefully. And as Steve said, we are to some extent a slave, if you like, to funding opportunities. This $5 million grant opportunity that Steve has referenced is probably the last tranche of money that will come out of the September 2019 National Bushfire Funds. And it seems to us that we should put together a concept around rebuilding a significant lodge meeting space up on the hill. It will go into the government by the 7th of September as a concept only, and they will work their way through their processes at the same time as we are continuing to consult and get some reassurance that we're heading in the right direction through the master plan process, which ends up with a discussion about where we're all at around about the AGM in November. So, Ian, I'm encouraging all of us to think a little bit outside. So I hope that probably gives you a little bit of confidence that we're working to a majority of shareholders' opinions. We're working to making sure that we can respond to grant opportunities which show that we are respectful of work that's gone before us. But we are also mindful that there are areas within our site that we should reconsider, given that events have changed the look and feel of the place.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
That's it from me.
Yeah, thanks very much for that that answer. I suppose we've lost the time to half joking here, to hold an international architectural competition like they did for the Opera House.
Not really, in the sense that we are just reacting to one grant opportunity at the moment. There are still areas of the land, particularly the area around the Bellbird clearing, which there was some suggestions about eco-sciences and so on. No, there are still opportunities to invite people in. It's just that we're working at the moment to this particular opportunity around bushfire funding.
Right. Thank you.
Is that sufficient for you, Ian?
Can I just add to that?
Excellent.
Yeah, Tim?
Yeah, I take your point, and certainly I think having a clean slate has given us lots of opportunities, but as Jonathan said, the feedback so far from the various sessions we've had with shareholders is to put something back where we are. I think the word iconic keeps coming up from people, if that's what they'd like. Our challenge is to work out what that is, how that works, and to me it tends to be an iterative process that we come up with some ideas, get feedback and keep improving on them. I guess the example we've got is the Sky Lodges. When we started with that process 12 or 13 years ago, we basically had a piece of land and could have built anything. And in those days with the approvals, we physically could have built anything. So I know some of the feedback there ranged from some people just wanted 24 little cabins tucked into the trees, and other people suggested, why don't we put a 9-story building there, you know, that gets the views everywhere. And so I think what we ended up with was, you know, the 3-level buildings that aren't too imposing from the ground, but give the number of rooms that Bitterborough thought was appropriate, 32 bedrooms. I think we ended up with a pretty good outcome that was still stone, timber, tin feel. But it was only by taking all the ideas of all the people we listened to that end up with that really good outcome. And I think where we'll end up with is probably a really good outcome. I mean, just having Jonathan come on board, you know, with the idea of making Groom's Cottage back to the heritage heart again is like, you know, just those new ideas like, oh, that makes sense. We should all be doing that. And that's what happens in my experience in this design process is we will keep getting lots of ideas that end up with a really good outcome. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the outcome is.
Thanks, Tim. Ian, I noticed in the chat you asked a question of me about the main border track through to O'Reilly's. The answer is yes, that will reopen between Bitterborough and O'Reilly's when the road access comes through. Heather asked about the dump point being added to the camping area. Jonathan's responded on that one, Heather, that we...
yeah, that's fine, thanks, Dave.
Yeah, it's still in the, we'll see how that goes down there, what potential there is. And then,
the reason for raising the dump point is with the extra, you know, facilities for motorhomes and things like that. It's got the potential to stuff up your sewage system if you don't provide it. So,
yeah. Oh, we're big on sewage. Don't worry about that. Jeez.
Can I just add something to what Ian was saying before?
Yeah.
And Herbert. I think the key thing is what Tim said in terms of being an iterative process and getting feedback. I think that's where the shareholders are going to want to see, you know, the progress that we've got, you know, version 1 as a concept plan ready, you know, give us feedback on it. We're up to, you know, the next version, just so that you're continuing to involve the shareholders in the process, because that's where you get all these good ideas coming out from. So, yeah,
and that's important, very important. And we're very sensitive to that. It's most important that we do that. As Jonathan mentioned, just we've got this little opportunity now for in a very, very short period of time with a funding opportunity. We may or may not be successful, but we've got to have a crack at it. And then we'll see what happens after that. But,
can I just make another suggestion then as well, Steve? On a different topic. Jonathan mentioned that we've got some new staff there. You know, obviously one of the key things with the Bitterborough is a relationship between the staff and the guests. So I think it'd be really good if we could, you know, publicise that we've got these new staff and maybe, you know, put their faces up on Facebook so that, you know, people start becoming familiar with these new people, or, you know, old people coming back, so that we're sort of enhancing the, you know, the guest experiences, because they won't be strange faces. There'll be people that they might have, you know, seen reference to in your wonderful marketing that you do on Facebook.
Jonathan, leave that thought with you.
Yeah, okay, I'll pick the good ones. And like most things, that there's a mixture of permanent staff and casual staff, so happy to introduce them perhaps week by week at what their roles are and so on. But yes, I'll note it is important to make sure that the staff are really friendly. It's certainly speaking to Tony and Richard Groom, the importance of that relationship that the staff play to make people feel welcome and to be the bridge between strangers. I think it's really important.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think sort of coming up and knowing that you're going to see, you know, Fred Smith is going to be front of house because that's the new person that was on the Facebook that week is going to be a big benefit to you.
I think I'm positioning myself as the new grumpy Gus, but I'm not sure what the other staff's positions will be. Somebody's going to ring the bell in the morning and get everybody out of bed. We're working on it.
Any other questions? Anybody would like to ask? I mean, if you think of something after this, please always, you can just send them an email. Obviously it's we're a very open organisation. If anybody, if there's any further questions or comments, if not, I'll
yes, Steve, if I may.
Yes,
We have put out the request to all the FOBs to see whether people can help with getting the tents and the whole site up for opening. Answers are coming in, and I'm certainly going to be up there with the first 4 people next Thursday. And
Thursday?
Next week.
Oh, next week.
27th.
Oh yeah, you're yep.
But I'll get back to Jonathan before the end of the week with all the replies, and it looks as if there will be quite a few people who are willing to help out. So that looks good.
Oh, great! Thank you to all the FOB members for helping on that. Tomorrow we've got.
Can I, Steve?
Yes, Jonathan.
I just at this point just thank FOBs. Just acknowledge that in the last month that they have generously sponsored, effectively funded the barbecues that are going back into the campground areas, and also some money's been set aside for the furnishing of the library, the reading room, and the like at Groom's Cottage. So the support of FOBs continues to be very strong, and I'd just like to acknowledge that. Thank you.
That's great. Gillian, did you have a question at all?
I suppose the only thing would be whether you're able to present by the AGM. You're talking about various scenarios of what to do with rebuilding. If the shareholders were able to have something for more formal document, various scenarios with various risks, budgets, etc. So we've got a fairly clear idea of what you're thinking and what it's going to cost, and whether one will outweigh the other, etc., etc. I know that's a fair bit to ask in a short time, but I guess if we're going to be making decisions fairly soon on what we're going to do with the actual Old Lodge site and whether we're going to go there, I think some detailed sort of analysis would be helpful, etc. That's probably my thinking is on the whole thing.
Yeah, thank you, Julian. Yeah, lots of work to be done, and depending on timing, how we can progress it and have it ready for the AGM at what stage is available, and obviously it all has to be underpinned by solid financial modelling and what it's going to cost and where the money is going to come from. Ian's just sent me a note there about the AGM, the date of it. Yes, the date has been determined, Ian, and shareholders will get a note on that. The appropriate time, but the AGM is scheduled for November, Sunday the 22nd, and we'll probably have it at the hall at Mackenzie's farm again, like we did last year, because we're expecting a strong turn up again. So Sunday the 22nd of November is the AGM date. And
so Steve, that's actually changed, hasn't it? Because it was originally going to be the week beforehand.
Yeah, it's now the 22nd. Of November is the date. It's in the diary now.
Will it be accessible by Zoom?
Well, why not? Now that we're all Zoom. And of course, it's all subject to COVID issues. And at this stage in Queensland, we can have events of up to 500 people. But, there's a lot of costs and pressure on having an event in COVID times too. So we'll just have to be mindful that if COVID, if we have a Victoria situation, it may have to be a Zoom AGM.
Believe it, even now, Heather's in Sydney, so she'd have to come up and quarantine for a fortnight before she could go to the AGM.
Yeah, that's right.
I've just come back from Queensland, and you might actually get to have a peaceful AGM without me if you're lucky.
So anyway, so we're in a COVID era, so we've got to obviously factor that in too. But even if we didn't have the COVID era, I think that now that there's more comfort in people using facilities like Zoom, those that we could have both an online and an offline AGM opportunity for people to engage more with Bitterborough also. Okay, any further questions?
I just had an earlier question of is your consultation kind of architectural group, is Tony Groom included on providing input to that?
Oh yes, yeah. In fact, we had a very good chat with Tony and Richard on Sunday night in detail about, it was part of the reason I got Jonathan and Tony and Richard, the four of us, to have a campsite fire up at Mount Roberts and camp up there and chat about their views and visions and things, and what went before and what goes in the future. And out of that discussion, I'm very sensitive to the fact that all of us who have been around Bitterborough for a while have, connection and emotion and experience. But in 20 and 30 and 40 years' time, we won't be the Bitterborough customer. It's another generation that's the Bitterborough customer. So we've got to make sure that we listen in on the 20-year-olds and the 30-year-olds, some of whom are shareholders or the kids of shareholders, and there are non-shareholders. We get more business. Bitterborough survives because people who are not shareholders stay there.
Yep.
Less than probably about 1 or 2% of our income comes from shareholders. So 98% plus of our income comes from customers. And we've got to understand what the customer wants and build something that customers want it too. And we've got to be careful we don't just do what shareholders want, because shareholders don't generate the income to make the place sustainable as an economic activity. So getting that balance between the owners, who are the shareholders, and also the customers who provide the income so the shareholders can have their vision and dream there at Bitterborough, that's part of our challenge, and we're up to it. We'll achieve an outcome that makes sure that Bitterborough, the spirit of Bitterborough and the facilities there are going to be solid for the next 100 years in a business model that's better and stronger than it was before, because it's been a very hard business in the last 86 years to generate the income that's required to improve it and keep its values. That's part of our challenge, and the collective team that's working on it is doing a great job heading us in the right direction.
So Steve, just on that, I just wanted to mention with the shareholders, you just need to keep in mind that part of the reason the shareholder base is getting more elderly is because there hasn't been a capital raising to encourage new younger shareholders. So I think you just need to consider that when you're having those sorts of conversations about the shareholders being a small percentage.
Yeah. And that's another way to look at the intergenerational transitions also. Okay, any other points anybody wishes to raise?
I think you're all doing a great job. Keep it up.
You're very kind. Come back, bring your family, get all your groups together. If you're in any club, get the club together and bring them to Bitterborough after September. Can I just finish on one last note? We have, as we build up for the opening, we haven't traded for 12 months, and so we've been very fortunate to be successful with some grant applications post the bushfire, well over $3 million worth, but that's project specific. That doesn't pay the wages or the electricity and all the operating costs. And the banks have been pretty good to us, but they can be difficult sometimes also. So cash is tight, and we've got to get things ready, the tea house, and build up the staff and pay them before they, it's a couple of weeks before we start trading, but you got to have your staff there. So cash is very tight. And some shareholders are very kindly offered to give some loans to us to help us get through this very tight trading time. If anybody who's listening today is of interest to talk to me about shareholder loans, we need chunks of about $50,000 or $100,000. Please give me a call or send me an email. I'm the guy you start the talk with. But I'm not shy to talk to shareholders about shareholder loans. But so if that's something that you might be able to assist us with, please get in contact with me. On that note, it's a happy note because you got to have money to make honey, and right now we need some extra cash to trade us through. Help us through. We'll get there, but it's not easy. So some shareholders have been very, very supportive, and that's wonderful. But a couple of more would help relieve a bit of pressure also. So on that happy note, looking forward to our next connection, the fourth and last of the webinar series. Incredibly excited that in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be able to get traffic on that road up into the lodge, kick off with the Sky Lodges, and then you've heard the plan that's been rolled out today. And, you know, the future of Bitterborough is looking pretty good, I reckon. And it happens because we got this enormous support from people like yourselves who are engaging and listening and contributing today also. So thank you, and I'm going to end the meeting now. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, Dave. Thanks, Jonathan.
Fantastic.
Bye.
Job,